Joining us now from Washington, D.C., where we'll be for the remainder of the week, is Kayleigh McEnany. Now, you know Kayleigh. She spent about 18 months, I think, on CNN. She was one of the big defenders of President Trump during both the nominating process and through the campaign, and did a remarkable job on CNN, under fire every day from God knows who was on there. And she is now the chief spokesperson of the Republican National Committee under their new chairman, Ronna Romney. Good to have you with us.
Hey, John. Thanks so
Kayleigh.
much for having me. I appreciate it.
Kayleigh, why did you leave CNN? Because you were so spectacular on that network for such a long period of time, normally outnumbered like I am when I go on 5 or 6 to 1. Did you just get up one day and said, I'm just done with that?
I got up one day and decided I wanted to be among allies and join the fight on behalf of the president. And, you know, I certainly was fighting for him and defending him over at CNN, but to really be in D.C., to be on the same team as my colleagues and supporting this president was really important to me. And especially to one day be able to tell my future kids, hey, you know, I fought for something I believed in, and I went into the fight.
Well, that is good for you. And it does get tiring on there. I go on about 3 times a week, and it's always 4 or 5 or 6 to 1, including the host. So it does get a bit tiring. So I applaud your new efforts here at the Republican National Committee. The president today, he's in New York. He'll be addressing the General Assembly, Kayleigh, tomorrow. He's meeting today with Israel Prime Minister Netanyahu. He's also meeting with Macron of France. What do you look for the next 2 days as the president goes to the UN? What are the objectives? What do you think he's trying to do here?
Well, I think what he's trying to do is lead on the world stage, and we've already seen him do a great job of that. ISIS is truly on the run. That was just a phrase during the Obama administration. It's a reality in the Trump administration. And, you know, we've seen him engage in tough talk with North Korea, needed tough talk, and he's not apologizing. You know, we had an apologizer in chief in the form of President Obama, and I think you're going to see a president who's proud of this country, who's proud of what America stands for, and who's going to fight relentlessly for American values and not apologize for that. So I think that's what you're going to see in his UN speech, and I'm so excited to finally have a leader in the White House.
Well, look, there's no question about that. Kayleigh, let's get to some fake news out there. Over the weekend, we've heard several reports coming out that the president was reconsidering his decision to get out of the Paris Accords. Then the White House put a statement out saying that was absolutely fake news. Where does this stuff emanate out of?
Yeah, it's a great question. You know, we've seen an unprecedented number of leaks with this administration, which is very discouraging, not to mention a felony. We see false information because the press, you know, has a takedown effort against our president. I don't know where this particular one emanated, but as Kellyanne Conway said, you know, he is our president, someone who's going to fight for American values. The Paris Accord, as it stood, was a raw deal for American workers, and that's why President Trump got out of it. And, you know, any deal that's ever entered into, it has to be favorable to American workers, has to be. And President Trump will not get us entangled in these deals where the United States is paying and footing the bill for the rest of.
How does the Republican National Committee now, Kayleigh McEnany, how does the RNC fit into helping advance the president's agenda? Can you outline that for us?
Yeah, you know, I think what's important for the RNC is, you know, we stand behind the president, and to say that repeatedly. You know, we have a wide array of voices in our party, and, you know, I think that's part of what makes the Republican Party great is we do have a wide panoply of voices out there. But I think it's our job to say and reiterate over and over, we stand behind the president. We have to come together. You know, it's inexcusable that Obamacare repeal and replace didn't happen. We made promises to the American voter. So, you know, part of it is holding our party accountable and helping to be that tailwind behind tax reform and the other big agenda items we have coming up. And, of course, revisiting a repeal and replace, but also making very clear where we stand, and that's behind the president of the United States. You know, there's one person who won a national election. That was President Trump, and we stand behind him.
Looking out at a crystal ball right now, there's a lot of vulnerable Democratic senators in states that Trump won. There's also many House districts that have Republican representatives that Clinton won. Taking the long view right now, how do you see the midterms playing out from the perspective of the Republican National Committee?
Oh, I think we have a very exciting 2018 to look at. You know, we have more Democratic senators up than Republicans by a long shot. And several, as you point out, several of those Democratic senators who are up are sitting in states that President Trump won by a landslide. So we find that to be encouraging. And it's also encouraging because, as President Trump has already done with senators like, let's say, Claire McCaskill, he's putting on the pressure for them to come and stand with the president on tax reform. It should be a basic common sense issue to give the American worker more of their money. And, you know, we can use the fact that, you know, there are vulnerable Democrats to get them on board with tax reform, which is a big agenda item for us. And I think, you know, if tax reform happens, and some of the president's other plans, perhaps infrastructure, maybe repeal and replace, I think we're looking at a very good 2018 because this is a president who's delivered on his promises.
Okay, speaking of promises, we've heard that he might be willing to negotiate away the wall to make a deal on legislation for DACA. I mean, that would be breaking one of his campaign promises, one of his core promises. How, Kayleigh, would you reconcile that if that were to happen, especially with his base?
Right. Well, the president is committed to the wall. He has said over and over again, he's already working on repairing portions of fencing that are already up. And he's actually getting 4 different models from different companies with their plan for the wall. So that is underway. That's going to happen. It needs to happen. It's one of the president's key promises. But with regard to DACA legislation, we know the president rescinded DACA as he promised. That was an unconstitutional action taken by Obama. President Trump rescinded that. But he's willing to negotiate on DACA and letting these kids stay as long as border security is attached. So, you know, that's something I don't think anyone wants to see. People who have only known this country by no fault of their own, they got here. I don't think anyone wants to see those folks deported, and the president is among them.
Well, I think the big issue on the amnesty for DACA is, and I've said this pretty consistently here on our show in the last couple of weeks, is there's 2 issues. There's the 690,000 that are in the program now, along with the 33,000 whose applications are being processed. So you have the 720,000 that are in the program now, and then you have DACA in perpetuity taking new apps, which would then be the magnet of attracting illegals to come over the border, which is part of the problem we had. So I guess we have to wait and see exactly what the president's going to end up negotiating, because I think you're right. I think if it's with the 720,000 people that are in the program now, the 690 that are in, the 33,000 that are being processed, I think even the most ardent Trump supporters and hardliners on immigration, if we got a deal for that included the wall, I think that would be fine. But I think if you go beyond that and say we're going to continue the DACA program in taking new applications in, I think you're going to have a war on your hands. I don't think the Trump base is going to deal with that. Now, you know, we've heard that the president thinks he can get away with it. I don't think he can. But we'll have to see what plays out.
And let's also emphasize the president said last week he's not talking about amnesty, not talking about citizenship. That leads me to believe what he is talking about are work visas. So, you know, this isn't amnesty. I realize that some folks are calling it that. But, you know, this is literally allowing people who came to this country as children, have never lived in another country, most of them, or, you know, came at least when they were very, very young, allowing them to stay and be on work visas. But if coupled with border security, the president's also made that clear. There has to be border security. We can't allow 11 million more illegal immigrants into our country. We have to have a permanent solution to immigration. So, you know, I think he's a businessman, he's a negotiator, and we're going to find a middle ground on this, but not one that sacrifices our principles. You know, we've seen the Democrats come closer to President Trump. For the first time, we hear Nancy Pelosi talking border security. That's an encouraging sign, I think. But this is Democrats coming closer to the president, not the other way around.
All right. We're with Kayleigh McEnany. She's now the chief spokesperson for the Republican National Committee. Kayleigh, let's get to the RNC and let's get to the new administration of Ronald Romney. Tell me some of the differences there that you've seen and what Chairman Romney's vision is going forward for the RNC.
Well, we've seen record-breaking fundraising, which is so encouraging. I mean, we are outpacing the DNC by wide margins. And that's, in large part because there's so much enthusiasm behind this president. And, I know our chairwoman is deeply committed to seeing the Trump administration advance and seeing their agenda move forward. She's out there on TV, on radio, promoting this president and also doing record-breaking fundraising. So I think what we're seeing is just an organization that is passionately committed to progress and to success and to honoring our commitment to the American voter. And it's encouraging that we're all on the same team. And when I say all, I mean the White House and the RNC. We're all on board promoting this agenda together.
Kayleigh, many of us credit your data mining and the data operation that the RNC put together was one of the keys to victory in those 5 blue states that the president won in order to beat Hillary Clinton. Can you elaborate a little bit on that, and what is the RNC doing with that going forward now?
Yeah, we have a big data team. It's very exciting. We have, as you mentioned, it's so important to isolate and zero in on who the Trump voter is. And I think one of the great things about the RNC is we do have Chairwoman Ronna Romney McDaniel, who was the former chairwoman of Michigan. Obviously, Michigan was key to the president's success. And, having her there, having someone there with a deep understanding of the Trump voter is so important. But we have data that basically allows us to target, to isolate, to find the Trump voter, to encourage them to get out and vote. It's a crucial component of victory last time around, and it's a crucial component going forward. And we have a big team that's working hard at making our data even better, certainly better than the Democrats. And look no further than Hillary Clinton, who has said, the DNC was in shambles when she became the Democratic nominee. They had almost no data, no operation that was progressive and helpful. So we at the RNC are on the opposite side. We have a great team that's working hard.
Tell us, if you would, Kayleigh McEnany, tell us a little bit about Ronna Romney McDaniel. We don't know her. I've had Reince on my show probably 20 times in the past. Tell us a little about your new chairwoman. What is she like? What motivates her? Just give us some insight.
Well, she's a wonderful person. She's a mother to children and a wife, and she's from Michigan. So she is a great example, I think, of what Republican voters are like. They try to paint the Trump base as this, homogenous group of voters, but they're mothers, they're wives, they're all kinds of women working hard in our party. And Ronna Romney McDaniel is a great example of that. She's a working mother. She's from Michigan. That obviously was a crucial state to the president's victory. She was chairwoman there, and she's doing a great job. She's doing a great job, and it's hard to be a mother and to be a working mother at that. But she's a great example, I think, to women out there that this is what Republican voters look like. We're working women, and the RNC, I can tell you this, our communications team is filled with a number of women, and she's helping to lift up women all throughout our organization.
What's your vision?
So our vision is America first. Our vision is the president's vision. It's America first. It's putting the American worker first, and that means on the foreign policy stage, making sure that American values are promoted. And beyond that, trusting the American people, putting more money in their pocket, knowing that when the American people left to their own accord will succeed. And our country is the greatest on earth because of hardworking men and women across the country. And, all across, our platform, we want to see more money in people's pockets. And we want to lift up the American worker and lift up, American values on the world stage.
We're chatting with Kayleigh McEnany. She is the new chief spokesperson for the Republican National Committee. Kayleigh, I want to chat a minute about, and we got about a couple more minutes, I want to chat a minute about DNC Chairman Perez. Some of the comments he's made recently are really exceedingly left-wing, liberal, progressive, off the charts. Normally you don't get that from a chairperson, right? Because you're representing both factions in your party. So like yourselves, you've got the Jeff Flake and the John McCain faction, and then you've got us, right? So you have to deal with the two of them. But Perez has been off the charts the other way. When you look at that, what is your reaction to that?
Well, it's
Kayleigh?
pretty startling. The Democratic Party has gone so far left. They've gone so far off the deep end. Just look no further than last week. You saw Bernie Sanders advocating for single-payer health care alongside, I think at this point, a third of Democratic senators support the plan. It's probably more than that at this point. And you're right that DNC Chairman Perez has, encouraged this far left creeping of the Democratic Party. He at one point suggested there should be a litmus test for their candidates, that every candidate needed to be pro-choice if they were going to be in the Democratic Party. He seems to fully support the Bernie Sanders wing of the party taking over, to the exclusion of moderates and to the exclusion of moderate Democrats who have other ideas, who do want to see their party negotiate with the president, work on behalf of the American people. But under Chairman Perez, you're right. We've seen a far left creeping of the Democratic Party, and every voter should take notice of that.
All right, we're out of time for this segment. I really want to thank Kayleigh McEnany for joining us today. You know Kayleigh from many months toiling on CNN as we do 5 and 6 and 7v1, and now she is the chief spokesperson at the Republican National Committee in Washington, D.C., working for new chairwoman Ronna Romney McDaniel, who we hope to get on our show in the next week or so. Hey, Kayleigh, great to have you with us, man. Great job for you in there.
Thanks so much. I appreciate it, John. It was great to join you, and I hope to join you again.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you so much. And normally we do our show up there about every 3 months, so I'll look into that, and maybe we can get that worked out. Thanks for being with us. New spokeswoman for the Republican National Committee, Kayleigh McEnany. Thanks for being with us.